बनाया इतने डीप सी में जाकर, इतना दूर जाकर, तो उसके लिए भी एक अलग पूरा डिफेंस इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाना पड़ेगा अगर युद्ध के समय इसको बचाना होगा। तो अगर चाइना को रोकना है तो सबसे पहले तो अपने देश की अर्थव्यवस्था को बढ़ाना होगा। ग्रेट निकोबार पर कंस्ट्रक्शन नहीं करना होगा। ग्रेट निकोबार एरिया का सबसे कम फ्रेगमेंटेड ट्रॉपिकल लैंडस्केप में से एक है, इसको बचाने की जरूरत है। और जो प्रपोजल है वो कोई छोटा मोटा बदलाव नहीं है, वो तो वेलकम होता है, कोई डिफेंस प्रोपोजिशन नहीं है। यहाँ बात हो रही है रेन फॉरेस्ट की जगह पूरा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाने का, नेस्टिंग रीजन की जगह बड़ा बड़ा एयरपोर्ट कॉम्प्लेक्स बनाने का, और इंडिजिनस हैबिटेट्स को उजाड़ कर इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर बनाने का। और ये प्रोजेक्ट जो इंडिया के मैरीटाइम और डिफेंस इंटरेस्ट के लिए क्रिटिकल बताया जा रहा है, ना ही मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ शिपिंग हैंडल कर रहा है, ना ही मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ डिफेंस हैंडल कर रहा है, बल्कि इंस्ट्रक्शन कहा जा रहा है सीधे होम मिनिस्ट्री से आ रहे हैं। और किसी भी जर्नलिस्ट के लिए यहाँ जाना भी मुश्किल हो गया है, इतना सीरियस, इतना रिप्रेशन का माहौल चल रहा है। फोर्सेस पर पैसा खर्च करो, ठीक है, कोई सवाल ही नहीं है। सुरक्षा पर पैसा खर्च करो, बिल्कुल, नो क्वेश्चन अबाउट इट। लेकिन क्या 90,000 करोड़ रुपए का प्रोजेक्ट रिटर्न्स जस्टिफाई कर ही रहा है? शुरू में तो खूब सारा पैसा लगेगा, इंजीनियरिंग में, प्रोक्योरमेंट में, कंस्ट्रक्शन में, कुछ चुनिंदा कंग्लोमरेट्स को बहुत सारा फायदा मिलेगा। लेकिन इसके बाद कौन गारंटी देगा कि ये निकोबार प्रोजेक्ट सक्सेसफुल होगा? दुनिया भर से यही कंटेनर शिप्स आएंगे, देश को पैसा मिलेगा, पैसा भर भर कर आएगा। इसका रिस्क क्या मिलेगा अगर ये प्रोजेक्ट फेल कर जाता है? ये विकास का ये जो डेवलपमेंट है, हम अक्सर अब देखते हैं यूपी में नेपाली के बिना फीजिबिलिटी स्टडी किए नए एयरपोर्ट बना दिए, 6-7 एयरपोर्ट बना दिए गए, जिनमें 6 और 7 फेल भी कर चुके हैं। और अब कोई जवाबदेही नहीं है कि ये हजारों करोड़ों का टैक्स पेयर का पैसा जो बर्बाद हुआ, ये जो एयरपोर्ट बने, फीते कटे, बोरा फ्लाइट पूरे फिर बंद हो गए, इसकी जवाबदेही कौन करेगा? यहाँ भी ऐसा ही कुछ लग रहा कि सरकार चाइना का नाम लेकर इतना बड़ा जो प्रोजेक्ट है उसका फीता तो काटना चाहती है, वरना कंपनी को कॉन्ट्रैक्ट तो मिल जाएगा, पैसा टैक्स पेयर का मुंह फिर कर निकलेगा। ये बात कहते कहते हम थक चुके हैं कि चाइना हमारा सबसे बड़ा दुश्मन है, उसको इकोनॉमिकली, मिलिटरीली, डिप्लोमेटिकली हमें लड़ना पड़ेगा। लेकिन क्या चाइना से टक्कर लेने का तरीका एक 90,000 करोड़ रुपए का कंटेनर पोर्ट हो सकता है, जिसकी फीजिबिलिटी स्टडी नहीं है, जो एनवायरमेंटली इतना बुरा डैमेज करेगा, जिससे कुछ पूंजीपतियों को बहुत सारा पैसा मिलने वाला है? थोड़ा ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड देखिए और पूछिए कि क्या हुआ वो 100 स्मार्ट सिटीज का, वो 100 स्मार्ट सिटीज जिसे भारत एक नई सदी में जाने वाला था, कहां गए वो स्मार्ट सिटीज? या फिर आप पूछिए क्या हुआ क्लीन गंगा प्रोजेक्ट को, जिसमें 20-30 हजार करोड़ रुपए पता नहीं कहां चले गए मां गंगा के अंदर, आज तक किसी ने जवाब नहीं दिया। या पूछिए उस नॉन बायोलॉजिकल इंसान से जिसने 12 साल पहले बोला था कि धोलेरा सर बनेगा, वो धोलेरा जो शंघाई से भी 6 गुना ज्यादा बड़ा होगा, क्या हुआ उस धोलेरा? धोलेरा DHL है, धोलेरा SIR, इस पर जाएंगे तो बहुत डिटेल मिलेगी। हम अहमदाबाद से 80 किलोमीटर दूर समुद्र तट की तरफ एक नया पूरा शहर बना रहे हैं, तो सांघाई है, तो सांघाई से 6 गुना ज्यादा बड़ा हमारा वो धोलेरा बनने वाला है। Charles Howard and chronic events should be removed as the Douglas Mugler once in a decade champion guard at the top. What is handed over to City Manila is a country full of gods.
The year was 1968, and globally it was a moment of revolution. Students marched in Paris, Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated, and while the US was at the height of the Vietnam War, Japan and South Korea were just beginning their economic battle. And yet, in the heart of Asia, China was drowning in its own blood.
Mao Zedong once saw it.
His radical policies had devastated the country. These marches were yet for the start of the Great Famine. 40 million.
The countryside is in control.
Had unleashed such horrific policies that millions are starving, families crumbled, children died in their parents' arms, and villages simply vanished from hunger.
Mao's failed policies had devastated the country.
We saw some reports of people dying in the field. Starving peasants eating some of the seeds for next year's plant.
Danish peasants gather weeds for food, anything to keep themselves and their children alive. A tragic picture of China's fight for survival.
Meanwhile, in the cities, it wasn't hunger, it was terror. Teachers, writers, and even senior leaders were dragged from their homes, beaten in public, and jailed for imaginary crimes. Fear had replaced trust in the society of China. So the world's oldest civilization, once built on the values of family, wisdom, and respect, had now descended into chaos, hunger, and betrayal. And among the so-called traitors was the family of a 15-year-old boy named Xi Jinping. Xi's father had once fought beside Mao in the revolution, but one false accusation of disloyalty and the entire family was ruined. Xi was thrown out of Beijing into a poor village with no electricity, no school, and no food. For 7 long years, this was his home. He slept on food-infested beds, hauled manual through rice paddies, and lived as the son of a traitor. But little did the people of China know that this boy, the disgraced son of a traitor, will one day rise to become the most powerful leader in China and the most dangerous man on earth.
Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Is one of the most powerful men in the world and revered within the Communist Party in our legends.
We now have another very capable, a very courageous leader, a leader with great vision.
The question is, how did a banished boy in a dying country rise to become the most powerful man in China? What were his strategies to climb the ladder of the toughest political network in the world? Watch this episode very, very carefully because this episode has some very important lessons on power, politics, and survival. Before we go on, I would like to thank all of us for your content. People managing projects is always difficult. Countless WhatsApp messages, follow-up meetings from clients, deadlines piling up, and one missed task can lead to failure. As any project manager, I can tell you that coordination is an absolute chaos. But this is where Odoo's project app can help you out. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software which is trusted by over 12 million users. And its project app gives you everything you need to stay on top of your work. You can create clear project dashboards, set up custom milestones, invite team members, create and assign tasks, and track deadlines all in just one place. Whether you prefer the card-style Kanban view, a detailed Gantt chart, or a clean list, you will always have the full picture of your progress. And within each task through the chatter, you can schedule activities such as to-dos, calls, meetings, reminders, send emails to your clients, or add log notes for yourself or your team members. With Odoo, collaboration becomes effortless. You can add task tags, share files, leave notes, and even work on tasks simultaneously. And the best part is that Odoo lets you manage your entire project for free with lifetime access on your first application. So if you're ready to stop managing chaos and start leading projects with clarity, click the link in the description and try Odoo project today. country's rise, you must first understand the collapse of Mao's China. You see, Mao Zedong launched a policy called the Great Leap Forward.
The great leap forward put the country on a tremendous growth trajectory. Industrial output was growing at double digit every year.
Promises to transform the People's Republic into an instant paradise through the sheer force of numbers.
But instead of progress, it became one of the deadliest man-made disasters in history. To implement this policy, Mao banned private farming altogether and forced villages into giant communes. Overnight, farmers who had tilled their lands for generations became slaves of their own soil. And then came this obsession with steel. One fine day, Mao, whatever decided, the Chinese had to go from 5.9 million tons in 1958 to 150 million tons of steel production by 1967. But you know what? He gave his people no iron to work with. So you know what the families did? The families melted down their cooking pots, their farming tools, and even their children's toys just to meet Mao's unrealistic target. And the result? Useless, low quality scrap that couldn't build anything. And now these families had no pots to cook in and no tools to farm with. But this is where it got even worse. Mao declared war on farming itself. He declared traditional farming as backward and forced peasants to follow a fake science called Lysen Quiescent. In this method, seeds were planted so close together that they choked each other. The plowing was so deep that it destroyed the soil structure. It looked scientific on paper, but in reality, it was suicide. Look at this. China's grain output collapsed from 200 million tons to 143 million tons in just 2 years. And you know what happened because of this? 30 million people starved to death.
China experienced the worst hunger disaster in human history. In the early 20th century, famine and epidemics spread like wildfire.
And while millions of women and children were starving, you know what Mao did? He practically doubled the grain exports just to maintain China's international image. A lie that China was growing while its people were dying. This is how political optics ruined millions of families all across China. And when Mao's grip weakened, he turned children into red guards to control the chaos. So students beat their teachers, sons reported their own fathers, and temples and books were burning. This was a nightmare that she was excited to. But what happened next was nothing less than a masterclass in strategic patience. You see, she realized that in China, real power did not come from rebellion. It came from the Communist Party itself. So if he wanted to rise, he had to be inside the system. So he applied to join the party again and again and again. And every single time, the answer was the same. You are rejected because your father's crimes make you untrustworthy. Now, most people would have given up at this point, but she saw something that others couldn't. He understood that rejection wasn't the end. Rejection was just information about what the system feared and what he had to change to be accepted. And with that clarity, she began the slow, deliberate process of reshaping his destiny. And instead of fleeing back to Beijing with other disgraced youth, she stayed and he hauled grain under the blazing sun. He carried manure to the rice paddies and he dug irrigation ditches until his hands bled. And while all of his peers saw manual labor as punishment, she saw it as intelligence gathering. You know why? Because he wasn't just surviving, he was understanding how power flows from the ground up. And while she toiled in the villagers watched this former Beijing elite share their hunger, share their exhaustion, and share their daily humiliation. And something unprecedented happened. These villagers endorsed Xi for village party leadership, and by 1974, with grassroots support behind him, the Communist Party finally accepted Xi Jinping. Xi's first move after getting party membership reveals the mind of a strategic genius. In 1975, China's university system was in ruins. Colleges had been shut for a decade, the national entrance exam was suspended, and with a handful of universities that were operational, admissions totally depended on political connections and party approval. So she leveraged his new party status to secure admission in Tsinghua University. Tsinghua University was a prestigious university. It is hailed as China's equivalent of Harvard and MIT. But this wasn't about education, it was about access. You see, Tsinghua was where the children of party elites studied. So she wasn't just getting a degree, He was re-entering the power aristocracy his father once belonged to. Here, he rebuilt connections, became friends with future leaders, and learned that in China, your network is your lifeline. And here's where his strategy play came in. In 1976, Mao Zedong was dead, and China saw the rise of a new leader named Deng Xiaoping.
China was now under a new leader, Deng Xiaoping. Twice purged himself, Deng had seen the horrors of the Cultural Revolution. He set out to reverse many of Mao's policies.
And in 1978, Deng Xiaoping finally opened the doors of China for economic liberalization. Now, when economic liberalization picked up in China, Xi's father was reinstated. He was assigned to run the Guangdong province, and this renewed influence opened doors for Xi. So he landed a prestigious position in the Central Military Commission, the supreme military authority of the Communist Party. Now, most ambitious politicians would have clung to this Beijing power position, but Xi did the complete opposite. In 1982, he voluntarily exiled himself again, this time to a poor province called Hebei. Now, the reason why this was very counterintuitive is because it's almost like a politician in India going from the core power network of Delhi to a remote state like Nagaland. At first glance, this looked absurd. Why would anyone trade the polished corridors of Beijing, where the power was concentrated, for the muddy roads of rural Hebei? For most politicians, leaving the capital meant political suicide. It meant being forgotten. But she understood something deeper about power. You see, Beijing was always full of ambitious men clawing at each other for influence. Their fate was always tied to shifting political winds. One wrong alliance, one wrong word, and a career could collapse overnight. But in Hebei, however, there was no competition, no spotlight. This is where real governance was to be done. So irrigation canals had to be fixed, food shortages had to be solved for, and peasant grievances were to be addressed. This was the dirty, unglamorous work which a politician had to do. But while she worked in this province, she got something that was far more valuable than prestige. While others in Beijing were known only for speeches and titles, she would be known as a man who could actually run China. By staying out of the dirty politics of the capital, she avoided becoming anyone's immediate threat. He was rising slowly, invisibly, and safely. So, what looked like exile was in fact a masterclass in patience and governance. And this is where the third step came in. What she accomplished next should terrify every Western strategist. He took out one province at a time and turned them into an economic miracle for China.
Xi Jinping is reshaping China province by province. Economies are rising, industries are booming, and the countryside is transforming into engines of growth.
Xi Jinping had the insane track record of transforming the economies of four different provinces: Hebei, Fujian, Zhejiang, and Shanghai. Take Zhending County in Hebei, where she was actually stationed in 1982. In this province, 70% of residents were farmers earning barely enough to survive. This was because of Mao's ridiculous policies. But she deployed a semi-suburban economic model which had four strategic interventions. While farmers were growing low-value grains, she enabled the farmers to grow high-value vegetables and fruits. Since the farmers were uneducated and unaware, he enabled government-provided greenhouse materials. And technical training was also given to the farmers so that they could enhance their yield. He also gave the farmers direct access to sales channels to urban consumers. On top of that, he also gave them performance-based rewards. And the result? Farmers earning 60 yuan per month suddenly started making 2,000 to 2,400 yuan per month. And annual incomes jumped to 10,000 yuan. Today, Zhending ranks among Hebei's top 10 economies. And since 1978, its GDP and per capita income have grown over 300 times. This is how Xi Jinping established himself as a master leader. And then came Xi Jinping's golden opportunity that made him one of the most powerful men in China. This opportunity was the opportunity of Shanghai's corruption test.
In 2006, then Communist Party Secretary of Shanghai, Chen Liaoyu, was sacked in one of China's highest level corruption investigations. Xi Jinping was chosen to replace him in what was a major step up in his political career.
You see, Shanghai is the financial capital of China. But the problem in 2006 was that it it was rocked by a massive corruption scandal. And because the 2008 Beijing Olympics was right around the corner, this was a very, very big challenge because the Beijing Olympics was China's propaganda instrument to actually showcase to the world that the Chinese model had been successful. And the problem was that in Shanghai, the party chief himself had embezzled $400 million from the city's pension fund. So, with the 2008 Beijing Olympics approaching, China needed Shanghai stable and scandal free. And this is where she was brought in to perform a surgical operation in China's most important city. And guess what? His method was executed with surgical precision. And here's what he did. He declined special privileges like private villas and luxury trains. He cancelled lavish banquets and excessive ceremonies. And he encouraged Alibaba and other firms to set up finance and tech operations in Shanghai. This reassured foreign investors that Shanghai's investment climate was still safe. And the best part was that he was able to maintain an impressive 12.9% growth in spite of the political chaos. And finally, China was ready for the Beijing Olympics of 2008, which was held in a stunning manner.
多年的期待，7年的筹备，
第29届夏季奥林匹克运动会终于在北京。
And because of this impressive track record, she was promoted to the Politburo Standing Committee. For those who don't know, look at this. The Chinese Communist Party is a giant pyramid. It has 92 million members in the party. But as you climb up, the numbers shrink dramatically and the power becomes absolute. At the base, you have the National Party Congress, 2,300 delegates who meet once every 5 years. But out of them, some are chosen to move up into the Central Committee of about 380 members. From there, it gets even narrowed. A select few from the Central Committee join the Politburo, which has 24 of the most powerful leaders in the country. This includes state ministers, provincial bosses, and military chiefs. But the real power sits even above that. This is called the Politburo Standing Committee. Today, it just has 7 members. This is China's true inner circle, a small group that makes decisions for 1.4 billion people. And at the very top is the General Secretary of the Communist Party. This is the position that Xi Jinping currently holds. And that title makes him not just the president of China, but the unquestioned leader of this entire pyramid. So the question is, how did he get here? Well, when Xi Jinping was promoted to the Standing Committee, it wasn't just a new job. It was entry into the room where every major decision about China was taken, from economy to military to even censorship was decided at this table. Now, the people deciding on the top leadership at that time, they wanted an experienced, polished person who was neither too ambitious nor too strong. And Xi Jinping, because of his history of humility and service to the villagers, he was seen as a less ambitious, controllable leader. He had over 2 decades of experience and a clean image with no corruption record at all. So when the General Secretary stepped down in 2012, after his 2 terms were over, Xi Jinping emerged at the top spot to practically become the supreme leader of China. And this is where the entire power table of China was shocked. You know why? Because when Xi Jinping became the General Secretary in 2012, everyone thought they could control him like a puppet. But as it turns out, it was a catastrophic misjudgment. You know why? Because Xi went on a firing spree, and under the banner of anti-corruption, he systematically eliminated every potential rival in the system. Hundreds of senior officials disappeared, top military generals vanished, and political competitors were brutalized. And by his second term, Xi had restructured the Politburo in such a way that 60% members had direct ties to him. Then, in 2018, Xi did something that shocked the world altogether.
President Xi Jinping's name and political ideology are now written into the party's constitution.
President Xi looks set to pull off Vietnam power. He'll be reconfirmed as president for a historic third term of move.
To continue serving as president.
Xi Jinping rewrote China's constitution and enshrined something called Xi Jinping thought as permanent law. What does this mean? It means that his ideas can never be questioned. Secondly, he eliminated presidential term limits altogether. So before Xi, Chinese leaders served a maximum of 2 terms and then they had to step down. But Xi changed the rules so that he could be president forever. And you know what, guys? When these changes were actually up for vote in China's parliament, Guess how many people opposed them? Zero. Yes, not a single voice of dissent in a room of 3,000 delegates. Why? Because everyone knew what happened to the people who disagreed with Xi. But here's the terrifying part. His dictatorship actually worked. While America's GDP grew by 60%, India grew by 83%, but China grew by 111%. Similarly, China's per capita income nearly doubled, and today China controls 30% of global manufacturing, the entire solar panel supply chain, most semiconductor raw materials, and even electric vehicle battery industry. On top of that, with economic power, China has also become an aggressive military power. They built artificial islands in the South China Sea, they openly threatened Taiwan with invasion, and they even have crushed Hong Kong's democracy. And Xi Jinping's track record proves something that most people will never admit. Xi Jinping proved that dictatorship can deliver economic results faster than democracy. But the million-dollar question over here is, can a system built on fear and control keep delivering prosperity forever? Can you suppress 1.4 billion people indefinitely while maintaining economic growth? This is a very, very important question because the answer to this question will determine who rules the 21st century, democracies or dictators. And Xi Jinping, the boy who learned that power comes from patience and not promises, now controls the answer. And the most dangerous part is that he didn't learn these lessons from books or business schools. He learned them by watching his own country destroy itself. And that's what makes him so calculated, so patient, and so terrifyingly effective. This is the story of Xi Jinping, his rise to power, and the strategies that make him the most dangerous man on earth. That's all from my side of today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button and want to make YouTube happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump is angry. And this time he's angry because Russia, China, and India are coming together to challenge the power of America again.
US President Donald Trump threatened to add 10% tariffs on any country supporting what he called the BRICS anti-American policies.
BRICS was set up to regenerate our dollar. And that's okay if they want to play that game, but I can play that game too. So anybody that's in BRICS is getting a 10% charge.
This challenge is the BRICS challenge.
They are leaving their mark on the international system. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
The group of emerging economies known as BRICS
Trying to position itself as the voice for emerging economies, challenge Western dominance in global affairs.
And for those who don't know, BRICS is nothing but an alliance of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And on paper, these nations are so powerful that in 1995, while the PPP GDP of G7 countries was $17 trillion, BRICS only stood at $10 trillion. But in 2025, while the PPP GDP of G7 is $57 trillion, the BRICS countries together have a combined PPP GDP of $72 trillion.
The expansion of BRICS can definitely boost the group's global influence.
The BRICS countries together make up almost a third of the world's GDP. The world's economic balance is shifting towards the BRICS and emerging economies.
BRICS alliance has overtaken the G7 in global economic weight.
In fact, today, BRICS nations represent nearly 40% of the world's population. They control more than 80% of the world's rare earth minerals, and they hold over 20% of global oil and gas resources. So the question is, what is BRICS doing? Why is it so powerful today? Why is America threatened by the rise of BRICS? And what does the story teach us about power, politics, and geopolitical alliances? Before we dive in, I want to give a massive shout out to Odoo for supporting this content. Now listen to this very carefully because what I'm about to tell you is something that you cannot afford to miss. This August, something big is happening in India's business world, and Odoo is leading this wave. Odoo is hosting India's biggest business and tech event with over 20,000 plus founders, creators, and professionals coming together under one roof. And you know what the best part is? It is absolutely free to attend. It's called Odoo Community Day 2025, and it's happening on 14th and 15th of August at Mahatma Mandir in Gandhinagar in Gujarat. Gujarat. And I'll be speaking at this event with my brother Ayush Wadhwa on 14th of August. At this event, you will get to attend 200 plus expert sessions, live product demos, influencer panels, founder keynotes, and a killer after party that you definitely don't want to miss. So whether you are an entrepreneur, a creator, a techie, or just someone curious about what India's future looks like, this event will help you learn, grow, and connect with people that actually are building India's future. So if you're serious about building smarter, scaling faster, and meeting the change because of tomorrow, this is the event that you just shouldn't miss. So if you're interested, hit the link in the description and register now. And I will see you at Odoo Community Day 2025. So let's start by understanding what exactly is so special and powerful about BRICS that the President of America himself is worried. Well, there are three reasons. Firstly, BRICS is on a mission to break America's greatest superpower, which is the US dollar. Look at this chart. Slowly and steadily, the dollar's global dominance is fading away. 20 years ago, 70% of foreign reserves were in dollars. Today, it's down to 60% and it's still falling. Now, BRICS countries are planning to make a unified BRICS currency, which is a direct attack on the dollar.
BRICS countries have started a bold discourse of ditching the dollar's dominance in favor of national currency.
BRICS common currency is going to be, as it stands right now, a currency that's backed by tangible assets.
So India, of course, stands together with BRICS nations in exploring use of increasingly local currencies and potentially launching a BRICS currency as well.
So now, if you look at the transactions across the world, a trader like Rahul from India, if he wants to buy oil from a supplier in the UAE, Rahul first needs to convert his rupees into US dollars because global trade is dominated by dollars. So Rahul's transaction passes through the Western controlled SWIFT payment system where Western countries see, approve, and even control this transaction. And for any reason, if the West imposes sanctions or restrictions on India or the United Arab Emirates, Rahul's business transaction can be instantly stopped or blocked. In short, Rahul's trade is completely dependent on the dollar and the Western banks' approval. But after BRICS strategy, if Rahul wants to buy oil from UAE again, here's how it will play out. Now he would use the BRICS Bridge platform where his rupees will be automatically converted to digital rupees, and using blockchain-based technology, his digital rupees will get converted directly to digital dirhams instantly, cheaply, and without passing through the Western financial systems. So this transaction never touches the dollar. So Western sanctions or restrictions will no longer apply to Rahul or any trader in India trading with United Arab Emirates, because this trade route entirely bypasses the Western controlled financial infrastructure. So Rahul will be free to trade without the mercy of the West. And even